Hello and welcome to the Virtual Velo Podcast. It's episode 62 and the important thing is it's the first episode of 2025. So happy new year, everybody. We are back for 2025 with me, Emma Martin, and my co-host, Chris Schwenker. And today, Chris, we could not be kicking off the new year in any better way.
Emma, I couldn't be more thrilled to kick off 2025 with you and begin another exciting year of podcasts. And what better way to begin than with one of the biggest names in cycling esports, someone who's making an impact both on and off the bike.
Yeah, I agree completely. She is right at the forefront of elite women's racing. And I, for one, am a huge fan watching her week in, week out. I get the absolute joy of putting words to her action. Second place, she took a silver medal. If you haven't guessed who's joined us, she took a silver medal in that World Championships in October. Welcome to the Virtual Velo Podcast, Gabi Guerra. Welcome, Gabi.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. You've got such a fabulous, diverse and colourful background. And I know you from cycling esports, but you have life and a sport before cycling esports. So perhaps we could start off by kicking into a little bit about your background, because I think it probably reflects on who you are as a person and an athlete. Tell us a little bit about maybe your childhood, your pre-cycling sport, and what brought you around the world to where you are now.
Sure. So, yeah, as a child, I wouldn't consider myself very active as an athlete, really just more playing around. Growing up in Brazil, soccer is a big thing. So always kind of playing soccer. It's just part of the culture. When I was a teenager, I moved to Germany and then I started skateboarding, which is as a Olympic sport now, but back in the days, it was more like not very popular amongst women, but I always had the mission for bringing sport to other women. Yeah, I just had a really big passion for skateboarding, but unfortunately, that brought also many injuries with it. It's a very risky sport. And then I slowly had to give it up and was just finding other sports and other things to do that maintain me active. So I tried running and hiking, flying, paragliding. Cycling was always a part of my everyday life, just to move, to get to places. So I was always kind of in touch with bikes, but never really as a sport and as training. That came later, when I was recovering over and over again from injuries. So I used cycling as a powerful tool to keep me fit and to help me recover.
I think it's really interesting when you speak about the skateboarding and that it was underrepresented. The stigma was only tomboys did that. And you went around the world and you had sponsors and you created a video to kind of change that perception. In a way, that's probably something that not a lot of female athletes did back then, especially in a sport like skateboarding, which was not a traditional sport. Why did you do that then? And how did that shape the way that you're championing women's sports now?
That's a good question. My main motivation back then was because the sport had such a prejudice that women couldn't do it, or that you would be a tomboy if you are a skateboarder and a woman, or that you have to look a certain way. But I valued my style and I wanted to keep my being feminine and still doing that sport, even if it's a tough sport and it gets ugly and it gets really tough. But I just wanted to show the world, no, you can be a real woman and do that sport. So the idea was to create a video that's very provocative and goes to the very other extreme, meaning, okay, I'm going to dress up with a dress and high heels and then take my skateboard and walk up to the skate park and then have my skate shoes and then change to the skate shoes and then skateboard pretty well with just more girly outfit and then doing girly things. But that was really the extreme. It was not that I was like that, but I just wanted to just get a shout out or a call out there. And I put that video on YouTube. 10 years ago, YouTube was very different. So there was a lot of difficulties with music rights and stuff like that. It wasn't as easy. The video went viral. It got millions and millions of views and was everywhere. So I think I was able to make my point and get a pretty big impact in the sport. And nowadays, through social media, which we didn't have back then as strongly, for example, with Instagram or being able to influence in general with social media, I think nowadays we can see, just more and more women being able to do any sport and just be who they are, whoever they are.
And it's really interesting, isn't it? You talk about that coming from your time in Germany, but you talk about the soccer in Brazil, because you returned to Brazil, didn't you, when you stumbled onto competitive cycling. And I hear a story about how a simple mountain bike ride caught the attention of someone at a local bike shop who saw the potential that you could have in terms of cycling. What was that like?
That is true. I started mountain biking in Brazil because I wanted to keep myself fit. I just went to a local shop and got a bike and started mountain biking with the group. And then I discovered Strava and I discovered segments. I started just for fun chasing segments and trying to break all the local records, sometimes even the men's records or timings. So that was also a bit provocative for them, and they get really competitive in a good way. So I just made friends all around my hometown where I was mountain biking a lot. One of my very good friends, he owns a bike shop and he supported me a lot through that journey and like developing on the bike. And also I tried road biking for the first time in Brazil. That was really without any support of everyone that was involved in my journey, I wouldn't have learned anything. So that was great.
It's really interesting because people see you just as a snapshot in time, Gabby. They don't realize that you actually you raced in real life. That we have that argument all the time that we don't see your Strava segments from 20 years ago when you're crushing guys. It's really interesting. Now
She's
back
not
in
as old as
Germany.
us, Chris.
5 years. Let's say 5 years.
Okay. Well, I guess because I'm so old, I like speak in different terms. But anyway, back to Germany now. The winters are cold. You want to keep your fitness, and your introduction to virtual cycling and cycling esports is on a spin bike of all things.
Exactly. So, just as a quick explanation, the reason I was moving back and forth from Brazil and Germany was because I had my own company and I was exporting honey from Brazil to Germany. I was always moving back and forth to like manage production and sales in both countries. So, when I went to Germany, indeed, the winters were a thing. For me, a problem because I really don't like any outdoor sports in the winter. I really tried. And it didn't really work. So I wanted to do something indoors. And then with the spinning bike, I discovered the indoor cycling. And the first program I came across with was Zwift. And I started. The German team manager from Rose Beast Mode team that still exists and still active, Sebastian, he got in touch with me because he saw one of my rides and he said, well, even if you are on a spinning bike doing those numbers, and even if we subtract a specific percentage of what the power would be, I think you have a potential. So he messaged me and asked if I have interest in started racing with the Beast Mode team. And I said, yes, I do, because I always had this competitive side in me and I want to learn more about the sport. I had like everyone else just to learn from scratch, from zero. How does it all work? And like start with ZRL and start figuring out what is it all about. So he had me go to a teammate's house that lived nearby us in Germany. It was Pia. She's also still very active. She was also at Worlds, Pia Kummer. It was so nice to meet her again. And so I went to her house to do a test on her setup to see, okay, what can I really do? So when I did the test, they saw, okay, those are really good numbers and there's a lot of potential. We want you on the team. And that's when they started actually really supporting me, which I'm so immensely thankful until this day for every single bit of support they gave me to get started, specifically Sebastian. I always say that if without him I wouldn't be where I am because I would never have started. So that's how really I started, and slowly improving in the racing and in the training, and then getting into more elite races as well.
Did you ever imagine it would lead you to Abu Dhabi to compete for the rainbow jersey?
Never imagine it. And to be honest, Emma, even when the World Championship was announced a couple months ago, my first thought wasn't, I gotta go there or, oh, I'm gonna go. I was like, oh, okay, that's something. Okay, maybe, yeah, we'll see, kind of thing. So even before that, then when I was just, racing for fun, pretty much that wasn't a thought at all. There was indeed two previous world championships that I kind of wanted to take part of, and I could never because I was always injured. There was always something going on. So for me, it was like so far of reach in even taking part or having any experience of that sort.
Should we talk a little bit about Abu Dhabi and that World Championships back
Sure.
in October? Because stage one probably didn't quite go to plan as well as you may have liked, but stage two, you were absolutely dominant. And then it came down to that final set of points, and everybody, I think everyone around the globe who was watching, as well as everybody in that arena, was absolutely just couldn't believe how close the racing was. Gabi, what on earth was going through your mind, if anything at all? Walk us through how that played out for you.
All right. So, yeah, the first stage, indeed, the main fears was desperation because I didn't have really a possibility to practice fastest through segment. It's not that I'm not a sprinter and that I don't have good sprint numbers, because I know that I do. And I even had a good sprint, but the timing was crucial. And I never had that much experience to know where from the group should I sprint, where do I start. And I could just hear what people are kind of saying, and all that I got information wise was like, okay, start kind of like in the middle of the group. And that's what I did. But then I realized, okay, you need to start in the back, way back, and then work your way through and carry the speed. So that was the big mistake that left me with only 7 points in the first stage, which is not a whole lot. When maximum points are 20, getting only 7 points is a huge setback. But that instigated a very big fire in me to say, okay, I committed to this and I'm gonna stay committed. I can't do the math right now if I can't even catch up on points because I'm so far behind. It's like hopeless almost, but I'm not gonna lose hope, and I'm gonna commit to give my absolute best throughout the remaining stages because I know I can. And so I did. And the second stage was indeed phenomenal. The performance, I had a 5-minute personal best power ever. There are numbers that I still barely believe and that are just dream numbers. And I could get full points throughout, well, the climb and the finish line, not the sprint at the bottom of the climb, but that was pretty good. On the final stage, it was a mix of hope, but also it's a brutal stage because it's over and over 1 minute, like all out. And in between, you don't really rest because there's like a couple of rollers and we go pretty hard over the rolls as well. So it was every time I knew I have to get the points. I have to get as many points as possible. It was just focus on that. And then when I realized the last lap, I have 2 points left that I need to become a world champion. It's about the last sprint. All I can remember is I looked at my left side and I could see all the media people gathering around, like being ready to be like, okay, this might be the world champion. It was just, okay, I know it's all about this moment and I have to give everything, and I will. I will not give up. Doesn't matter how much my legs burn at the end of it and everything. And I did, but I just didn't. That's all I had. At the end of that final sprint, Kate, she won with good numbers, and like, wow, that was a very tight battle, and I think it was really exciting. When you are in that position, it's a little uncomfortable because anything can happen and it's so much pressure. Yeah, but when it was over, it was just, I have a picture that really showed the mix of my emotions. I couldn't help to just cry. I cry pretty easily and a lot. So it was a very disappointing moment, but also relieving because I knew the strongest I've ever been on that day, and I showed the commitment to the performance and not giving up, and it was worth it. And it was a good battle. Those were all the feelings around the stages.
So I was one of those media members that was standing right next to you. I could just sense that this is what was going to happen. It was going to come down to this final climb. And I probably could have reached out and touched you. And I just wish that the viewing audience could have felt that raw athleticism and emotion that was coming from the stage.
Yeah.
I think that there was an opportunity that was lost there. And I think that we would be speaking and talking and thinking about cycling esports different if we were able to get that across to the viewing audience.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. And I was going to ask you how you felt, but you've already told me that you went through the gamut of emotions. But it's one of these things where it was clear that you gave it all that you had, and you may have fell short by a little bit, but you still were a champion to everybody that was there. And you deserve to be commended. And it's an admirable thing that you did. Just to be there in Abu Dhabi took a lot. So, certainly it was,
True.
you should be congratulated for that.
Yeah, it's true. I don't want to say this, but I'm going to. You also finished second in the Zwift Games. Yeah, and just 2 points behind Catherine Fu, another one of those riders. In fact, Catherine took the bronze medal on that stage alongside you, but you were 2 points behind her in the Zwift Games. It's incredible to be so consistent, Gabi, at the highest level. But two big moments, and you came twice both. How did the Zwift Games compare to the World Championships? Are you more driven because you finished second twice?
As far as the Swift Games go, it was really hard for me to deal with it because, first of all, I needed and wanted the kicker bike so badly. So badly. It was like my absolute dream to have a kicker bike to begin with, and then a golden one. And then I also needed the new equipment. So it was like by so little, I missed it. And it was like winner takes all, and then you get second, and you like, I would say, in quote, get nothing. But yeah, it was just very heartbreaking and very hard to deal. Not that I don't honor the whole competition and everybody was just amazing. And Catherine is obviously an amazing athlete and has such good performances. And I love racing her because we push ourselves to our limits, and that's great. But it is just for me as a new athlete in that perspective, it was hard to deal with. And when it came to Worlds, it was still resonating in me. I didn't get it by so little. And then I asked Nathan, when Nathan is my husband, for those who don't know, and also my coach, when is this going to go away? That feeling. I don't want to be grieving almost, When I got second at Worlds, it really got better because I think that taught me how to deal with it and how to see second place not as a defeat, but as a victory as well. Especially when it's in a sport where it is about milliseconds and it's so tight battles, and when you performed well you didn't lose anything. So I learned to say, okay, I won the silver medal instead of I lost gold. And I think as athletes it's really important to work a lot on your mindset, especially as women, since we are very emotional. I think some of us a little more than others, but I personally, I am very emotional. So it's important to just learn to deal with it. Also, not make pressure like, oh, you have to win and get first and be perfect all the time. That also can be a cultural thing in my own experience. From the German culture side of things, to be everything has to be perfect. And for me, it was really hard to deal with it, but I'm learning still. That's just how things go. And if I keep getting second, it's not bad. It's not something bad. It's an opportunity to improve. It's another opportunity to aim for more. It's a win. It's a win as well.
No, it certainly is. And having gone through both of those experiences, now you have the privilege of hindsight. If you could rewrite history, would you have preferred to have won the rainbow stripes or that Goldtron?
Well, I think that rainbow stripes are the more, say, recognized and valuable achievement in the sport. I think that will be what is higher to aim for. I don't know if I make that difference between when I'm committed to give my everything in a race. Then it's like, does it really matter if it's about a rainbow or about whatever? I've just committed to do my best performance. It can be a Sunday race club, it can be a local race. It's about my commitment to the performance or to the sport or to the truth of who is the best athlete of the day or who wins the race. So
I'm just pausing because I just love that answer. I just think it's really, really interesting, isn't it? We sort of always, I think secretly you want the Tron bike, but there are more opportunities to win one of those, don't worry. It's just a really lovely sentiment, actually, Gabi, in terms of it doesn't actually matter what the prize is. Actually, it's about being there, being present, and delivering what you can deliver on the day. And I just think that's a lovely message to everybody, because sometimes I think we get caught up in other things. And that, I think what you've just mentioned is actually what's really important. And I think that's just a really lovely sentiment. So thank you. Interestingly, though, your story took a bit of another twist when you tried to leave Abu Dhabi and fly back to the USA, because you didn't end up in the States, did you?
Yeah, that was really tough because I am living in the United States, but currently I'm married to a US citizen. And I have the German and the Brazilian citizenship. But in order to be able to live as a US citizen in America, you need a green card. And I am waiting for my green card. I'm in the process. I applied. So if I want to leave the country and travel, so if I want to travel outside of the US, I need a travel document. When I saw, okay, we're going to Abu Dhabi, I went after that travel document and I requested it. But something in that whole process went wrong. That last minute, it got delayed, let's say. And then I traveled anyways, because it was like 2 days before the travel. So I wouldn't cancel the whole world championship, even though I applied for the document. It was a little risky. But then when I was going to travel back, luckily, Abu Dhabi is one of very few airports worldwide that have a pre-clearance for US customs. So I didn't have to travel, arrive in America, and then go through customs. I had the process in Abu Dhabi. So when I went through the customs, they denied my entry to America because I didn't have the travel document. It was delayed. And I couldn't just get in the country as a German, for example, with the German visa, because I'm in the process of waiting. So the things don't that add up in the system. So I simply got denied. The problem is we had this really, really hard race in the World Championships. Okay, I didn't sleep after that. And then we raced Sunday Race Club from the hotel. And then that night we had a celebration dinner and I didn't sleep either. So I was 2 days without sleep. And then I went to the airport at, I think, 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or something, because my flight was supposed to be at 4. So I was like 2 days without sleep and with a lot of physical load on my body. And then I had to wait for hours and hours to get that process cleared. What am I going to do if they don't let me in the US? So after hours of waiting, thankfully the organizational team from Maiwush helped me out and got me a ticket to Germany instead of to the US, because I have family in Germany. So it was the place where I could go until I could then further verify my documents and figure out how can I get back home to the US. So I did, and I ended up staying a whole month in Germany. It was also very fortunate that it was only 1 month, because it could have been way longer. But the travel document arrived and then I could travel back home. So it was a very, very tight, very difficult month right after the World Championship, for sure.
That's an awful story, Gabby. I don't know what other. I just, when I saw Nathan's face as you were going through this, I saw him in the hotel lobby, and I was just like, this guy looks like he, his world just fell out from underneath him. I felt so bad for you both, and then seeing you there and him here, and then you're still doing what you do, right? You're riding a bike. You got a setup. You're racing from Germany. How did that all come together? How did you get a setup so quickly? How did you get a trainer right away? How did you begin competing? Did you have to go through all the pre-verification because you have new equipment, all of those things? How were you able to just basically not even skip a beat?
That's a good question. So, right after Worlds, I realized that I can do this sport professionally and that I would do it full time. And then, as committed as I get with whatever I'm doing, I said, okay, this is my full time occupation now. So, I take it seriously. Being in Germany is not an excuse or option to not keep racing. So, from the moment I knew I'm going to Germany, in the airport, I started messaging everything and everyone, being like, okay, I need a setup in my house in 2 days, in the house in Germany where I was by my parents, where I was going to stay. And I started just trying to provide the setup so I can start racing next week and don't miss it out and don't miss on training. And I have also a pretty tough difficulty with my legs. If I don't move them very much, they get really swollen and hurt. So I really have to just exercise every day. So I freak out if I don't have anything. So I just started in the airport. And, through the World Championships, we had the elite support with all the trainers. And I got to know some of the marketing people and representatives. into chat. So I had the contacts and I contacted them, and they were so open and right away helpful and said, "We're going to send you a trainer and we're going to back you up there." So that's how I got a trainer. I had my bike with me, my frame, also my pedals, my power pedals. So that was also equipment was set. I had a pretty good gaming laptop with me, so that was also out of the way. And then I knew in Germany I have kind of a little bit of structure because I raced there before and I left kind of a little bit of stuff, so I had some things. But everyone that I asked for help, people were so open and so quick to help me out. That's also how I got a new partnership with a brand called Precision Fuel and Hydration because I needed race specific nutrition. In Germany and America, it's different to get things, and I didn't really know where could I get gels and stuff like that. And then immediately they also hooked me up with everything I needed. 2 days after my arrival, everything just came together and I was ready to go. So it was
Wow.
amazing. And again, it's just because people are open to help and don't hesitate, make things like that happen. That inspires me too to then also give further what I received, keep giving. And that creates like a fall or a flow, and that's really cool to see how the community supports each other, or the also companies. So big shout out and thanks to them.
Yeah. And Gabby, you're just talking there about, coordinating a whole new setup and bringing things together and things you'd left at your parents' house previously, things that people were helping you out with. It must have felt amazing in terms of everybody pulling together to get you back on your feet, having gone through that situation, leaving Abu Dhabi into Germany. Did it surprise you when you went into race 3 of the Zwift World Series and did as well as you did with all that previously happened over the last couple of weeks?
It did, yeah. I was surprised that I could race. I was thankful. I had multiple problems on my setup as far as my bike goes and technical issues that I was trying to kind of take care of myself, because usually I have the help of my husband, but then I had to like figure things out. I was surprised that I could race that much. Really thankful too every time, and like even little details, like you need a body scale, you need a weight, things like that I had that all ready to go. Imagine like if you have to get all those things together, how much time and money it costs to like go to a store and buy the things, or when it's not all ready to go. So I was really thankful that I didn't have to pause the series at all.
It was really, I was watching it live, and of course, Nathan was commentating it. And when you went for the preem and you got a gap and then decided to, I guess you had mentioned in the post race interview that you just went all in and the solo move and you won handily. It was funny listening to him because initially it seemed as if he thought that you made the wrong move and that he wasn't there to guide you. But then the ironic thing is that you didn't need him to guide you because your legs did the talking for you. And it was really nice to see. Unfortunately, that high didn't last because when the commissaires report came out, it showed that you were annulled for that effort. It kind of brings to the forefront what the sport has been dealing with recently. And I'd love to get your impression of the way that whole thing went down. You put up a tremendous performance, but it wasn't numbers that you had never done before. They were certainly within the realm of what you've done in the past. Why did that trigger an annulment? How were you notified about it? How did you process it? And then what steps did you go through to, I guess, defend yourself? And then not only did you have to defend yourself with them, you had to defend yourself with the community as well. You can give me some insight into how you dealt with that at the time.
Sure. So, yeah, first off, to begin with the strategy of the race, I did something that I wasn't planning either. So then I committed to the move, and that's how it came about that I could break away. So that was really cool. That's why Nathan was so surprised, because I actually told him I had another plan and then I ended up doing something different. So it was kind of cool and it was fun. And yes, the numbers I produced in that race, from both readings from the trainer and from the power pedals, are numbers I've done plenty of times before. So it was not like, oh, superhuman performance or anything. In fact, 2 weeks before, right when I arrived in Germany, I went for a ride outdoors, and I went to go get a KOM that I was wanting to get before I left Germany last time. So it was like a 5-minute effort, and I did even more raw watts than I performed in the race outside with the power pedals. So it was not something like outstanding performance in sense of new personal best number. The reason I was first warned that an annulment would probably go through was because the discrepancy between the reading of the trainer and the power pedals was too big, which I still don't know what that means, because I really try to follow with that German style rules very strictly, thing after thing, check after check. Okay, so what went wrong? And what is the tolerance difference can be between the trainer and the power pedals? And I understand that this is important for the performance verification, that the trainer and the power pedals or whatever power meter you're using for the secondary recording, that they read very close to each other to see, okay, this is really what's going on. What is the truth about the numbers? The difference between my trainer and my power pedals weren't very big. I think it was in the range of 3% difference there, something like that, which I have previously only seen my power pedals usually reading higher than the trainer. This time they were reading a little lower, like 5 watts or so, or 10 watts, depends on what amount of time. So the reason for the annulment would have been first that the performance cannot be verified. But then I said, okay, but wait a minute, is it really justified that you just simply annul me? How is it that you cannot verify this performance? And I really tried understanding, like, how does this all work? Why is the power discrepancy? What's the allowance there? What's the tolerance even there? How can I get my equipment to be that exact? I have done many tests before and tried different equipments, and it's really hard to get your duals spot on. I said, okay, if you guys want to verify this performance, I have plenty of data, very recent data, not older than 2 weeks, that I can do those numbers, or even better than those numbers, that those numbers were real, and that if the pedals were reading a little lower or the trainer was reading a little higher, I don't know. Was it the trainer or was it the pedals that were reading higher or lower? I don't know. And then I wrote an appeal and said, look, guys, if I worked through many times through their whole rule book, went rule after rule, and picked point after point and said, here, this shows the performance can be verified through the testing, through additional data, through outdoor data produced with the pedals, which I had the 2 weeks previously. So I put together a whole appeal and said, hey, this is not a reason to simply annul this effort. It's well within my power range, my power profile. I don't believe this is right thing to do. Another big aspect was also that the rulebook clearly says the race commissar is the one that has the final saying, and he is the one that decides. After having meetings with whoever is involved in that process, to me, it was very clear that the race commissar wasn't quite being independent in his decisions, and that there was a conflict of interest for that decision. And then you start digging and seeing, but wait, something doesn't add up here. Like, it seems like this decision is being made against their own rules. So I just did what I could. I put my appeal together, pointing at every single rule. I almost felt like a lawyer because I was like, okay, if this will be like a court case, I don't even see how I would have lost it. But okay, I put it all together, had all the data, all the proof, everything. And then all what that happened was that the reason for the annulment slightly changed. Instead of being the performance cannot be verified, it was like, I don't know what it was then. I was deeply disappointed because I don't believe that was a good decision or the right decision. I believe that our sport needs indeed more clear guidance, especially when it comes to performance verification, because it's not very clear what is actually required from the athlete, what is what. It's sometimes pretty confusing, I think. And I understand that it is important to have strict rules in the verification, but I think there needs to be more transparency around it all. How are we as athletes supposed to do it right? Like, sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. And I still believe that was a real performance. It was the wrong decision for that annulment. When Elite sent me that trainer, which I performed on, they had factory calibrated and tested with a factory parameter. And they sent it to me, and they sent me all the data showing the tests. And then I did multiple tests on that trainer. And after that annulment, I even more so, I even got different power pedals and did other tests and sent them all the data. And then when I left Germany to go back to America, I sent them this trainer back that I was using, and they retested it in the factory and retested it with the parameter, and the readings were just fine. And so, like, what does it even mean, fine? So apparently there was nothing wrong with the trainer either.
So if you had Gabi, I mean, it's the depth to the story is really interesting to hear, because as a community and as a public watching those performances and seeing those annulments, you don't hear the background and the work that you athletes do and the communications and all of that type of thing never makes it into the public realm. We never know. If you had to pick one thing that you think we should learn from the situation, or whether that be, I don't know, whether that be elite athletes themselves, or whether it be the platforms, or whether it be the manufacturers, what one thing would you say, having experienced that, you think really that's the thing we should learn from these types of situations?
I think that clearly shows a need for a governance above the platforms that prevents a conflict of interest. That's my main learning from it.
Yeah.
That's certainly a profound message. And I think the other thing that the community doesn't see is how the other athletes, the toxic nature of the witch hunt mentality that goes on and the stress that causes. I'm sure that you felt isolated by this. People are questioning your performance just because of the word annulment, right? It comes with a stigma. How did you deal with that at the time? Did you feel that? How did you deal with it? Did you try to block out the noise? Did you go on a mission to scream from the highest mountaintop? What did you do, and how can we get out of this mentality that the sport is in?
So, Christopher, to be honest, I didn't feel any of this persecution or hate speech or whatever, anything. I didn't. So I wasn't even worried about it, and that even didn't even like go through my mind. I kept hearing people being concerned for me for that, oh, that like messes up your reputation or whatever. And I'm like, I'm just doing what I'm doing. I expose all my training. I do so much training live. I expose all my data. I don't have anything to hide. It's everything out there. And I just kept doing what I'm doing. And even that performance that got annulled, I don't like, why would anyone say that's not real if I have all the data that shows it is? So I wasn't even worried about it. And I never had, luckily, anyone messaging or commenting on anything that I saw. So I wasn't really affected by it, and also not worried, because I'm like, okay, whoever annulled me made the wrong decision. I think was made injustice, but that didn't make me doubt anything at all. I'm just trying to, like, objectively, like in any other job or profession, how can we find a solution for this problem? How can I resolve this so that doesn't happen again? Because obviously there is my income on the line now. So yeah, I didn't have any issues in that respect. But I think, as far as I've heard, other athletes do. And that's really sad, because it creates even extra pressure. Most of athletes are doing so much hard work to even get where they are, to even do these performances. And if equipment lets out on you, then, and I'm not saying there's not people out there that do cheating or whatever, like our world is just like that. There's always something, but still, we shouldn't be pointing fingers where if you don't have the data or if you're not in charge, it's not your business then, or you make it your business and make it official, so to say.
I'm going to shift to something really positive at the moment, because before we came on air, Chris wandered away from the desk for a few minutes, and I was saying to Gabi, I have been absolutely, admittedly, I'm sat in the commentary box at the time, but I've been absolutely riveted to the Sunday Race Club recently, because Gabi, you, Kate McCarthy, Catherine Fua, the three of you. I might throw Merle Bruni in there as well, because Merle has been absolutely, I say to Chris sometimes, she's a bit of a dark horse, she is. She goes under the radar, and she really is a great competitor. You guys are creating some of the most thrilling cycling rivalries around at the moment, and you are the race to watch, because you just do not know what is going to happen, how it's going to play out, and who's got which tactics when, and it is just phenomenal. What is it like to be in the middle of that week in, week out?
I'm just starting to realize how awesome it is, because we have been pushing ourselves to performances that I would have never imagined, and I would have never pushed myself to if I wouldn't have had this awesome competitors and so strong, especially like the names you named, and Catherine, Kate, and Merle as well, and that are always so in that tight battle. And obviously the other girls too, they play a big role in that, it is it is exciting for me because I've been getting second all the time. So
You
it
came
is.
so close the other week. It was just, I was on the edge of my seat and I just
Yeah.
couldn't believe what I called.
Yeah, I mean, even that race was just insane because I thought I had it. I saw my avatar crossing the line. I thought I had it, but I didn't. So it was like, oh well, like I'm learning now how to deal with all of that, and all I can see is really that awesome place that we're creating to increase that performance and the level of the sport and of what a human body can even do. So I'm really excited, especially now with the new formats. I'm really looking forward how that will play out because that will give different types of riders also more opportunities. Intermediate sprints with KOM points, with courses that are not just a climb, for example, that have different. I think the race dynamic will change a lot. So I'm very excited to see that. And I think we will see big names coming up there and different names having opportunities and popping out and getting to stand out too. So I'm excited for that.
I guess I would say, I don't know the word that I would use, but it's very interesting. It's kind of affirming in a way, and it's very encouraging to hear you describe yourself as a pro cycling esports athlete. Because when I started this podcast, when I started covering cycling esports, 3 years ago, we weren't even close to anything that was professional. And I know that the fact that you can make a living doesn't make the sport professional, but it certainly legitimizes it and it does move it forward and it makes it appealing for athletes. I don't know if you know how much you made racing last year, but there's a great website out there called mywishinfo.com that it's kind of like the MyWish equivalent of Zwift Power, where all the data is available. It's public. Jacob over there is doing a great job. I want to just acknowledge him for all the work that he's doing. I crunched the numbers and you had a pretty good year. You made the fourth most out of the women's field. And that's across all platforms. You were in the range of $50,000, which is an incredible amount of money to be making as a cycling sports athlete in the infancy of the sport. It really points to the legitimization of it as a viable entity.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, thanks for the acknowledgement. Yes, it is a pretty good income regarding that. I started actually racing in September only, so it wasn't the whole year. It was just from September on, and that's just huge and shows the immense opportunity. I think that is a big part. It's not a only part, but it is a big part for growing the sport that an athlete can make a living out of it because it makes you committed to it, makes the athlete committed to it, and then it draws the other parts in. It's not the only part, but it's a big part. So I'm really thankful that we can start doing that now. It's pretty recent, and there are so many things to deal with that still the sport needs to grow, but we got to start somewhere. I'm so glad to be a part of it and to be like one of those first professional athletes in the space. And even when I was thinking and planning about my season for 2025, first I was planning on a bunch of outdoor racing, mountain bike, gravel, road. I want to do it all. Now I'm seeing a big difficulty in the cycling industry as far as support equipment and all that go. So it's really hard to just get support for the outdoor racing with bikes especially, and I do have right now a lack on equipment. The money that I'm making I can use to invest in that, or I can just say no, I'm gonna reinvest in this sport and keep growing. My planning for this season is to keep focused on the virtual cycling throughout the whole year, even throughout the summer. Outdoor racing will be a part of it, but it's not going to be priority. So my priority will be still the virtual cycling, even though I really enjoy racing outdoors, especially mountain bike. I miss it a lot, the whole adventure side of it. Yeah, it doesn't mean that I cannot do it, but it's just you can't really make a living out of it right now, or as a newcomer to those areas, to those disciplines. That's why the indoor cycling is also a very, very great opportunity to support that.
Well, I think there's a lot of your cycling esports fans will be really pleased to hear that you are fully committed to a 2025 season. But no breaking yourself, please, no breaking yourself, because you have previously come back from multiple fractures, collarbones, shoulders, all of those types of things. Historically, you've also been very open about battling eating disorders as well. We want you in one piece. We want you going forward. What has that journey been like? And do you still struggle with healthy? I mean, from the things you've spoken about today, you seem very positive, very forward thinking, well, and planned for the future. Do you struggle at all with a healthy mindset now? Or how has that influenced what you do now?
So, one of the things I'm really grateful for is that cycling brought me less injuries than other sports. So, I previously 3 knee surgeries, 2 shoulder surgeries, all the ligaments got just redone. And I also had fractures, double fracture on my hip, on my collarbone. Like I went through a lot of injuries. And that's another thing that the virtual cycling keeps me from is those injuries. But part of the injuries that I had as far as breaking bones goes was because there was a season where when I was into cycling, when I started going a down spiral of underweight, and I was really obsessed with like being as light as I can be, and slowly forgot about, okay, you gotta be strong as well. Just light isn't strong and won't make you faster. Yeah, I developed an eating disorder over about 2 years, I think. And when I started virtual cycling, it first made it worse because for the elite racing, you need to do weigh ins. When I was just about to recover from my obsessing about weight and even caring about it, when I started indoor racing, then it all restarted again because then I had to pay attention and to like weigh myself, and that was a big struggle for me. When I got married and when I started actually training with structure with a coach that is also my husband, he really helped me. Nathan really helped me and guided me through, first of all, being a healthy athlete, having a training plan, having an eating plan. And I started all of that 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago, when I was recovering from my stress fractures because of underweight. So what we did was 1 year of pure just building up a healthy Gabi again, which I wasn't really very comfortable because I had to gain 10 kilos. And that's pretty tough for someone that cares about it and struggles a lot with it. But I tried as hard as I could to commit to the process and to trust that my husband and coach has my best in mind and with his amazing experience would guide me through it successfully, and that I would become not only healthy but also strong. And to my surprise, that was not for his surprise. I am light and strong now, which is perfect for cycling. I'm not too light, too underweight to the point of losing my period and something like that, because previously I just didn't have a regular cycle for like 10 years or something. Yeah, now I went through that process. It was scary. It was hard. It required a lot of work, a lot of discipline. And we slowly figured it out. How does my body work with the training, with the nutrition? How can I be optimizing, getting stronger, and then to the right moment, lean to a point where my body is still comfortable and doesn't feel like it's gonna starve. So we were able to now, after 2 years of training and learning, get into a pretty healthy rhythm of that. I'm still learning a lot. I think anyone that went through some sort of struggle with eating or eating disorder or whatever you want to call it knows it's like kind of always around. You have to always be aware and be careful to not fall back into certain patterns that might even feel comfortable or right if you tell yourself so. I have to be very disciplined in either way. So I just use that discipline and that energy to motivate myself to focus on being strong. And if I have to, even just, let's say, allow myself to gain weight and not sacrifice my health, because I really experienced to the bone that it's not worth it.
Yeah, I think people don't realize that disordered eating, eating disorders, it's a mental illness. There are people that struggle with it. There are people that are hospitalized. There are even people that die because of eating disorders. And it's a very understudied and underrepresented issue in cycling esports. And you can argue that the sport makes it worse with the weigh ins, with the weight cutting, opinion on the ideal weigh in procedure, and also weight cutting. Is that something that is part of the sport? Could that realistically be eliminated from the sport? How do you feel about those two issues?
I love that question because I obviously think a lot about that. So I went through different experiences about the weigh-in window because of the different races we had and different just rules. So I experienced a 24-hour weigh-in window. I experienced for Worlds, it was like 8 hour window or so, and then every Sunday race club it's 1.5 hour window. For Zwift it's usually a 2 hour window. So first of all, I had to learn how to deal with those windows because I learned and I researched about other sports that have weigh-ins. What are they about? How do they deal with it? And then I immediately eliminated all the sports that have weigh-ins but don't need to perform physically. Means bodybuilders, for example. Not that they don't perform, but they don't need to perform with their weight. But fighters do. Fighters do have to weigh in and they do have to perform heavily after the weigh in. I found out that usually for those sports, they have a weigh in window of 24 hours for the professionals, not a day off weigh in. And I tried just researching, okay, how do they do it? What's like healthy or unhealthy. For my own experience, either way, if you are an athlete and you are competing at the highest level or you just want to give your best, you are just driven, you want to do everything that is possible and legal to enhance your performance. And obviously, the weight in game speaks very loud to your performance. So I want to do everything I can to optimize my weight for my performance, which leads me or us to the question of weight cutting. I believe you can be smart about it. You don't have to be extreme about it. But I won't drink 2 liters of water right before my weigh in because that will make me 2 kilos heavier, for example. So I plan my racing when I know the weigh-in window. I plan it all around the weigh-in moment because I want to be as light as I can be and as healthy, not depleted, and as healthy as I can be. So I do plan around it, and I figured that the closer the weigh-in window is to the race, the harder it gets mentally and physically because I just like, for example, my strategy is I just don't drink water a couple hours before the weigh in because that makes a big difference for me. I don't know, maybe another body reacts different to water retention. My body is very sensitive to any retention. So I know my body, I learned it throughout those 2 years where we were learning about also the weight gain, weight loss, and how my body reacts. So I know that for myself, and I have to adjust to each weighing window. And I'm not just gonna ignore and pretend that it doesn't matter because it does. It does matter. When I do have a bigger weigh-in window, I feel way more comfortable because I feel like I can be in control. I can do a little cut or what how do you define cut even? It can be defined in very different manners, I guess. I don't want to just throw it out there. But it can be, not drinking a lot before your weigh-in or not eating a couple hours before or even going to the sauna and sweating the excess water out. Those could be cut strategies that can make a difference. And then if you have more time between the weigh-in and the race, you also have time to pretty much recover from it. And then you have time to feel really well for the event. And I think, in my opinion, that's really healthy. But I know that some other people can be more extreme about it and like cut immense amounts and like fast starve or whatever to like cut big amounts and then use that window to replenish, which I don't think it works because your body can only intake so much. But either way, in my opinion, longer weigh-in windows are helpful. I don't really like the 1.5 and 2 hours. That's a bit too close and too stressful for me. Also, regarding the time zones, that for some people it might be at night. So they have their whole day and have been walking on their feet and swollen feet, or, just eating normally the whole day. You're not going to not eat the whole day just because you have a weigh in at night, right? I hope not. So I think that 24-hour windows gives just a little bit more flexibility. But I understand other reasons why the decisions have been made that some rules are the 2 hour or 1.5. I personally work my way with it. I do have strategies to bring my weight down as far as I can in a healthy way. For the one example was with the water, but yeah, it's a delicate topic. I asked for changes. I have been trying and experimenting on myself a lot. What works, what doesn't work. I race depleted before in races. It doesn't go well. It's something I think still to be developed in the sport, and especially the World Championship. I think the timing was perfect and very wise decided, because the weigh-in was made before breakfast in the same day of the race, which the race was at night or after late afternoon. So I think that was mentally also very helpful, because you had the morning before the breakfast, you can weigh in, and then you can eat and just nourish your body with what you really need for the race, without having the back and that in mind. Oh, I have to still weigh in, maybe I hold back or something. And I think people with disorders will always have that in some way, have that in the back of your head, that worry, like, okay, if I drink an extra cup of coffee, it's like extra half a kilo. It's that easy, depending on how you time it. So yeah, my wish for cycling esports would be that weigh-in windows get generous, and that not just like that, but with information about, with guidance about it, with athletes like me speaking out about their experiences and even writing about it, talking about it, and making it as healthy as it can get. But there will always, no matter what weigh-in window you do, if someone wants to cut heavily, they will, and it will be unhealthy either way. But it can also be healthy. So I think it's more about like, how do we communicate that? How do we expose that?
When you mentioned governance as the number one thing that you would want to change, this is an issue that can be governed and it needs to be addressed in the new year for a number of reasons. First of all, this sport is one tragedy away from having a very big problem. And what I mean by that is that the 24-hour window has been proven to be extremely detrimental in a number of sports. You mentioned the combat sports, you mentioned boxing. In wrestling, there have been numerous deaths in the collegiate and the high school level because of the 24-hour window. The rebounding of feast and famine causes are very unhealthy on the body, and it has caused deaths in the past. If because we're dealing with commercial entities and the litigious society that we are in, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. But if we have education, if we have identification, if we're able to have a safety first mentality for the athletes first, rather than how many subs we're going to get or how many people we're going to get to line up for the Sunday race club, then the sport would be in a much better place and a much safer place, frankly, when you speak about it. So, one of the things that the sports have done, and we might consider doing this, is that there's a weigh-in in the beginning of the season. You weigh in 60 kilos, then you can't deviate from that 60 kilos by a percentage. Say you weighed in at 55 kilos 6 races later, it wouldn't matter because your percentage is only 5%, and that would only mean that you could come down to 59 kilos. That way it kind of takes the pressure off and there's no real motivation to cut weight. I throw these things out there because I've thought about them a lot. And of course, I wrote those extreme dieting articles that oppose the 2-hour window that everybody hates now. If you ask 50 athletes, they all have a different opinion on this. And one of the major controversies that came out of the World Championships was the weigh-in window that you think was great. So it's kind of like there's such a huge discrepancy on what we think is right. And we need that governance to say, this is what we're going to do. If you're a platform and you want to adopt it or you don't want to, that's your problem. But this is what we think is best.
Yeah. Gabi, can I just say, there's a lot of people who wouldn't have responded to that question in the length and depth to which you did. Thank you so much.
Well, yeah, I hope I didn't make it too long, but it is just a big topic and something to be addressed and thought about. And I think some athletes aren't even that aware, some others are more. And I am obviously very, and I think it matters a lot, especially the higher up the level you go, the more it will matter. And we have to just be always thinking about it and see, like Christopher said, how can we make it about the prioritizing the athlete's health. And I think having the opportunity to speak about it is really important for me too, as an athlete with those concerns and the experiences that I had so far.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I know when I've done a lot of work historically coaching youth athletes coming into sort of under 18s and under 23s, once they get into national sort of coaching systems and talent identification, whether that's in mountain biking on the road or on the track, the first thing those sort of 15, 16-year-old athletes have to do is a whole load of educational workshops around healthy eating, healthy sport, drug awareness, all of those types of things that those mainstream disciplines, the governing bodies, bring them. It's almost like a funnel. The second they're on a red flagged as talent identification, they're put through, repeatedly put through those educational programs. And cycling esports as a new discipline doesn't have that pathway. It doesn't have that coordination to enable that to happen. And I think that's, you talk about an emerging new discipline. It's definitely something that really does need addressing.
Yeah, and it's really great to hear you speak so honestly about that, Gabby, because you are an influential member of the community. A lot of people look up to you. Like when I posted that you were going to be on the podcast, all the comments are, "Oh, she's such an inspiration. She's such a strong woman." And people, they look up to you, and that's what you want to. If you're at the pinnacle of your sport, then you're going to influence people, and that kind of brings me to this new chapter that you're going to be doing some live coaching from My Whoosh, and you have a chance to make an influence there. Can you tell us what motivated you to do that, and where do you hope to take that whole thing?
Christopher and Emma, my main goal is really to inspire other athletes, other people, other women, especially women, for this sport, because I have profited so much good from it, and I see so much good in it, and I really just want to share it and inspire people with it. And I have been live streaming for a while now. I live stream my races, but I do also live stream my training, and sometimes also recovery rides and just, chill and chat rides. And I really like doing that. When I saw that My Whoosh offers the live coaching, I thought, well, this is the perfect thing for me, because I am passionate about motivating other people to get through their workout. And I know how it feels like, and I can relate, and I know perhaps what to say in the moment to like give you that extra boost when you're working out. And I believe this is just a great opportunity, and that can really help people, and especially beginners, to learn more about themselves, discover the athletes in themselves at whatever level that might be, and discover the fun in that sport as well.
Well, whilst we're talking about the fun in the sport, it sounds like a good place to try and draw some closure. And because you are the first show, Gabby, of 2025, I am going to ask you for your New Year's resolution. Do you have one?
I'm honestly not very much calendar oriented person. So when it's Christmas or when it's New Year's, I don't really like realize it until, there's like a family gathering or we do something special about it. So I really just try to being grateful for whatever happened until now, learning from the things that were perhaps not very comfortable, and then looking forward to a future where we know the future can bring uncertainties and things that are also uncomfortable, but that we can learn and make the best out of it. But I think 2024 for me was a season of really a lot of growth, because it was also the first season I raced the road bike for the first time, and I was pretty successful in it, and I had really good experiences and learning experiences from it. I was able also to meet some girls in real life that I raced previously on Zwift only, so that was amazing. And just all the whole cycling world is still pretty new to me. It was my second year overall, even watching the Tour de France, and now seeing the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. It's just so much learning, but that's all from cycling. And so much that I learn in cycling, I also learn for my life in general, my psychological, my private, my family life, so much from there. And like it all goes back and forth. Where I learn from cycling, I put it into my personal life, and also vice versa. Just really what I'm most thankful for is that in 2024, let's say our society doesn't have to worry that much, I won't say at all, but that much about war, that we can invest that much like we're doing in sports, and that we don't have to worry that much about starvation and all economical problems that do still exist that we cannot ignore, but that we are privileged to be having full-time jobs all around sport and entertainment and fun. And I'm just aware of that, and I'm thankful to be part of it. And I just want to make it something that is indeed deeper and gets you values that are beyond just physical. So I think that that's what I also been learning this year.
Well, Gabi, I hope everything that you wish for comes true in 2025. And you have been an absolute pleasure to have on the Virtual Velo podcast as our first guest of the new year. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, guys. Really.
Well, you can subscribe to the Virtual Velo podcast on your favourite podcast provider and, of course, on YouTube. You can follow me, Emma Martin, on Instagram at biking_Emma, and you can follow Chris at the Zamunique. You can catch me putting words to the Action Echelon Racing League this Saturday. We're here, we're celebrating my birthday with the Echelon Racing League this week. And,
Nice.
of course, we'll be back with Gabi, hopefully, on the Sunday Race Club. It is all change there, and you need to tune in because who knows what's going to happen. Well, head over to thezamunique.com and sign up for the bi-monthly newsletter to support independent cycling esports journalism. We are going to have more impactful guests. They are already lined up from the world of cycling esports joining us. We have Carla Williams, Berdian Driscoll, Ariel Van Haren from the Aeonian squad coming up at the end of January, CVR founder Frank Garcia, 2028's Nicola Kramer, and Cycling Canada's Josh Peacock, to name a few. Thank you ever so much to Gabi Guerra and you for listening. Chris, Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everybody. Stay safe. Enjoy your cycling. We will see you again soon.